All right, cool. We're back with another edition of the Absolute State of Things. This time, just after the anarchist's favorite day, tax day. I noticed, or it's today actually. Yeah, it's 18th day is the deadline. And I noticed that, what was it, the Hominis, not the Hominis, the Alter podcast is also streaming right now, or at least they're starting at 6:32, and they the whole thing I think is about taxes and tax day because they label it like theft day or something like that, which I know I'm not getting much. I'm getting like $200 or so.
Spend your whole life paying into fucking Social Security, and by the time you or me are old enough to even draw from it, it's gonna be completely fucked. There's not gonna be anything left.
Oh yeah, it's insolvent. Well, if I remember when I first heard about Social Security and the fact that it was not actually like a retirement plan, and that the money you put in wasn't actually being saved at all. It was just being used to pay out the current Social Security, payees. I was like, well, that's just nothing. That's not even. That's. I mean, it's being a dead horse to call it a Ponzi scheme. Everybody knows it's a fucking Ponzi scheme. It's textbook Ponzi scheme. And so we thought we'd start it off with what should be the lighter side of politics, but also is not, because he's the fucking president. And that's Joe Biden's interesting thing. He had one word that he needed to get out. He seemed to have trouble with it. I'll turn down the Spotify music that I know you can't hear, but the stream can. And then transition over to the live testing. Oh no, our names aren't lighting up. We'll do that in a second. What? Live screen. No, presentation. That's what we want. Okay. Let's just play it and I'll figure out the light up names in a second. But and these sounds
defined in a single. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me. America.
You're absolutely fucking right. He nailed it. Look at that.
We've seen it a couple times already. This is not new, but like honestly, that's just too perfect. It feels like it was written for SNL, and neither of the two people on the side could keep a straight face when it happened either. Kamala Harris had the most like furrowed brow confusion, and then this other lady had to just look down like, she's the new justice, right? Oh my gosh, that's absolutely astounding that she got to be our new justice. But that was fun. Let me see. Look at Kamala. It's this face right here. And yeah, even the judge is like, that one ain't it, Chief. I'm not sure there, but it's definitely not.
I'm having a hard time figuring out what word he was even like reaching for. There's nothing identifiable in there.
I think freedom, maybe. Let's see, like, but that's a real big ass blob of freedom.
I was going to put him. Excuse me.
And the thing is that he didn't even, like, I remember seeing the longer clip and he didn't even clarify, like there was no further, like, no, the word that I actually meant was freedom or resilience, or, and you could have just, if he had landed on a word, then we could give him partial credit. We could say, okay, everybody fumbles their words, maybe not as much as you do and to the degree that you do. Same with walking up some stairs to get into an airplane. Seems to be a lot of trouble for him. But at least he got up there. At least he made it in the plane. He fell 3 times, I think, total. But he made it into the plane. But this thing, he didn't even stick the landing. He didn't actually drive home that word, whatever it was. And it was just so obvious of like a complete just derailment that we're like, okay, well, dude, if you can't even like get back on, like, if you, that was like a solid intro. right? That was a very that was a good, like, solid, confident. You know, if there's one word to describe America,
And
so
then he just fucking loses
I was like,
it. It's
oh, like you
it's
got
like
you
someone
got
who quit
everybody with that. Everybody's leaning like, what word is it? What's the word? Like, that's a, if you're a speechwriter, if you're a captivating public speaker, if there's one word to describe America, that's fantastic. You just have to say one more word. That's all you got to do is just say the fucking word. And not only did he not say the word the first time when he tried it, he just did not say an any word after. He fucking, dude, if he had said pancakes, we'd be shit. Fuck, pancakes describes America. You managed to get like all the fucking MSNBCs and the fucking CNNs would have been like, you know what, he's got a point about the pancakes. I'm with him there. I don't think that you guys are giving him this fair shake on this whole pancake idea, because come on, pancakes is America. If he had fucking said anything, they would have had something to like latch onto and been like, okay, he's got something. But there was no word afterwards, and that's really what got me. It was no sticking the landing, man. Come on. So from the lighter side of things, then we go on to mass shootings, because mass shootings are happening. Well, and they're happening, you know, they happen all the time in the sense that, like, what was it? The Gun Violence Archive. Have you ever seen that website?
Unfortunately, yes. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
And so for those unfamiliar, there's two websites that follow mass shootings that like on a regular basis that are just like, you know, dedicated to compiling mass shooting statistics. And it's the Gun Violence Archive. And then there's the Mother Jones mass shooting list. And ironically enough, like surprisingly enough, the Mother Jones one is the more sensible of the two, because it actually looks at, you know, mass death occurrences, right? Not just like mass casualty, like injury occurrences. And
right.
And then it filters the list for crime-related shootings, like ones between gang members, or because crimes or shootings where crime was the primary motivator, like a robbery where many people happen to get shot, but it was mainly intended to be a robbery, not a shooting, right? And so it looks at mass shooting events, you know, in the sense that we think of a mass shooting, right? A Columbine, a Virginia Tech, a Pulse nightclub. Like, all of these events elicit a very, like, when we say that these are mass shootings, they elicit a very specific sort of image in our brain of somebody wantonly shooting people without a direct target, but more of a desire to shoot massively and intentionally, you know, kill as many people as possible, but like in you know, without like regard to like a particular target. Maybe like, you know, like it could be like terrorism motivated, which that again is getting kind of like gray area in terms of whether we should consider that a mass shooting, you know, mass shooting. And a lot of libs don't really get this, and progs don't really get this, because they like to quote the other one, the Gun Violence Archive. And the Gun Violence Archive will list any event that had 3 or more people shot, whether or not they died. And the vast majority of the incidents in that list are incidents where nobody dies. There's 0 fatalities in a lot of the incidents there, and a lot of the incidents are, you know, very low death rates, like 1 or 2 people. And the other problem with this is that it mixes in a bunch of crime-related things, familial disputes, all sorts of different crimes for different reasons. And so if you're trying to look at the solution to mass shootings, already the Mother Jones one, it's really not fair to even lump all those together, because the motivations can be very different from those, from school shootings, right. Like a troubled teen who is ostracized from his peers and maybe gets radicalized in terms of like, or desensitized in terms of like violence, and already has maybe a troubled home life or mental issues that they need to deal with. That's very different from like, what was it, like that Navy shooting, right? You know, the Navy Yard shoot. Some like they're all motivated and triggered and festered by vastly different things. So it's already kind of a fallacy to lump in mass shootings the way that we consider them, but then to lump in all these other cases of just like gang violence, of like parties shooting back and forth at each other, or familial disputes where somebody kills their entire family and then kills himself. Like,
yeah, even just going by a body count doesn't work. I mean, that's not a guy going out in public and saying, I'm going to kill as many people as I possibly can. It's, it's just a shooting. Sometimes people, get shot by accident. Like, you were talking about robberies gone wrong and stuff like that. Or, somebody just happens to be caught in the crossfire, and then the body count just happens to be high enough. They call it a mass shooting.
Yeah. And so we see one of these, like, even this is ABC News, but it's just quick little AP reprinting, right? Associated Press, put out an article and they reprinted it up and just and noted that, again, like this is the vast majority of these like mass shooting events that you'd find in a website like the Gun Violence Archive, is that like 3 of the 6 people who were shot were part of a gang dispute. And let's see, show 3 deceased were affiliated with gangs, and one of them fired a weapon. Unclear if all 3 of them did. And there's at least 5 suspects in the April 3rd shooting, and 2 of them were brothers who were wounded, and another one remains at large. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about, like, this is the sort of thing that appears on the Gun Violence Archive. This is what like gets lumped into, like, when you see those reports of like, wow, it's only been half the year and there's been 140 mass shootings. That's what, like, this is one of the types of things that is. Again, they're all sorts of different shootings for vastly different reasons. And then so again, when progs and libs try to come on and be like, well, look at these mass shootings, it's a problem and we need to do something, the solution is gun control. And they always like, wow, we're missing so many fucking steps in that analysis. It's kind of unreal.
Well, you remember, I think it was CNN made a list. I don't remember exactly what year it was. I know it was a few years ago. But remember, CNN made a list. And I don't know where they pulled their list from, but I did actually see the list that they pulled. And, like, there was one that was they considered it a school shooting. And it was a guy who shot himself in an empty school parking lot.
Yes.
And the school hadn't even been in use for, I forget how long it was. It wasn't like years and years, but like there was nobody there. He shot himself in the head on the track, and they considered that a school shooting. And then there was another one with like a BB gun that they considered a school shooting.
There was one that was like in the parking lot of like a college on the weekend when nobody was there. Like all sorts of, I remember those school shooting list was,
and shit like that makes it into the list all the time.
And then progs will still like go, but it was a shooting at a school, right? Right. It's a shooting at a school, so it's right. It's not wrong. You're just searching for misinformation where there's none. I'm like, fuck off, bro. You are absolutely one of the most disingenuous. Like, just, you're not trying to find a solution to anything. You're just trying to be right by the fucking letters of the words, and like, there's no fucking point in talking to you.
Yep. I mean, they'll absolutely defend shit like that. It's that sunk cost thing. You've defended it for so long, you can't stop defending it. So
yeah, it's a lot with those NPC takes where they get pushed back a certain like step or two, and then they won't actually admit fault. They'll just stick to that one and be like, well, it was what was that whole meme about the conspiracy? It was like, it was a conspiracy, and then of course it was fucking right, and we never denied it, and just this like progression of like slowly admitting to things, but then also not trying to accept fault and like admit that
usually it's how did it go? It's not true, and then they said, okay, it is true, but it's good.
Yes.
It's not actually a bad thing. And then since it's not a bad thing, it's not really anything that you need to be worried about, and you're making something out of nothing, even though we said it didn't exist before. Yeah,
and this sort of stuff is used for everything, right? Inflation.
it's a predictable pattern. It keeps happening.
Actually, one hilarious one I saw was years and years and years ago. I think this was during the Obama years, where there's a lot of people were making a stink about the high amounts of deficit spending and the quantitative easing and stuff like that going on, and the fucking Vlog Brothers they had one of those educational channels that they had to explain like sciencey topics and stuff like that in very simple ways with cool animations on them and stuff. And they had like explained how like deficit spending wasn't actually that bad really, because like it's never going to be a big deal, and we just a normal way that we do to pay for our things. And yeah, it was just fucking it was full of just Keynesian bullshit is basically what it was. DTM is like, I remember those lists. They also include a cop's gun going off accidentally in the holster, shooting the floor. Yeah, that's a school shooting, just like Columbine. The next one, the next one we had was the NYC shooting in the subway. And of course,
yeah, that one's so fishy as fuck. I mean, there's so many weird elements to that one.
Or like the thing about the fucking ID thrown on the tracks.
Yeah,
no, it was a credit card, or it was a credit card, I think, or something.
Yeah, it's his credit card. He threw I think, didn't they find the gun too?
Yeah, and he like arranged for his arrest, I think, at some point. So the weird thing about this article is trying to drive home is that like people are making excuses for him. Like the city councilwoman is talking about how they need investments in social services like housing, healthcare, and education. And Politico also wonders what Brooklyn's subway shooting reveals about the state of mental health care. And the New York Post says so far nothing. To reveal nothing, which is fine, whatever. He's had a documented history of delusions and compulsions so severe that he couldn't function. Documented history. Let's see. Decades adrift in the broken systems. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna pay for the New York Times, so you can eat my dick. And I'm not gonna go through the trouble of going to like the fucking website source and deleting the over. Fucking.
They definitely had plenty of his social media accounts where he spent quite a lot of time posting stuff that was basically like black supremacy and black nationalism and stuff like that. So
yeah, they talk about that a little bit here too, where said white people quote kill and commit genocide against each other unquote, and will do the same to quote your black ass unquote. And called 9/11 a beautiful day. And of course it happened and he managed to shoot 9 people, I think, but not kill anybody. And then a couple people got injured just like trying to bum rush the exits and stuff.
Yeah, it's because he used smoke grenades, which that's a new one.
Yeah, that's also, he had a disguise as an MTA construction worker, and he like discarded it after he was done so he could escape. It's just, what's weird that they're trying to say that he was like mentally like disturbed and mentally like discombobulated, as it were, and yet like everything here was like really like sort of well planned out, but also he didn't succeed in killing anybody, and also like the smoke grenade didn't go off the way that he arranged it to. And yeah, I don't know, man, this is something that like conservatives are definitely going to jump on. Like, look at this black supremacist guy radicalized by the woke mob. But it's just weird,
And then we what they had cameras that were down again also.
Oh, I didn't hear about that, but that's wonderful. I mean,
yeah, there were.
What it is that Jeffrey Epstein disabled them.
Apparently, now I don't know if that's true or not because I haven't looked too terribly much into it. I had a pretty busy week this week, but
Jeffrey Epstein and Tupac, like fuck these cameras, yo.
But yeah, like that's the story that they're saying is that the actual cameras were not functioning in the area.
Well, you know what? It's New York City. That's not too fishy.
That's fair.
Like, have you ever been to New York City?
One time. It was a long time ago. But
to
yeah,
Manhattan?
one time.
I went on one time in like summer of 2002, and I was amazed at how the entire island of Manhattan smelled like garbage.
Oh, dude, it stank.
Like, and people think that I'm like being hyperbolic or like, you know, floral in my language. No, like if you stand next to a dumpster and smell that and go, "Oh, that fucking sucks," and then
It's straight up fucking
the
stank.
whole city smells like that. The
Yep.
entire fucking island, at least it did in 2002 when I visited. And
It stank.
it was the entire fucking place from fucking one end to the other. It was like this, and it wasn't just like it smelled like garbage. It was that there was this thick air of just disgusting smog and just garbage assaulting every sense that you had.
It was
And
bad enough that we knew when we had gotten about 10 minutes into New Jersey.
yeah, because then it suddenly
because
clears up.
It started stinking in the car. Well, it started stinking in
Oh,
the car
no.
when we hit Jersey. We hit Jersey, and I'm like, what the hell is that smell? And they're like, it's coming from outside. And then by the time we got to actually like New York and we got out, I was like, oh, so this is just what it smells like out here. Okay. Yeah, dude, it stank.
Yeah. Okay, so DTM says, I was there a few months ago visiting family. Imagine the smell of a normal city amplified tenfold, but also everywhere. It's an awful place. I don't understand how anybody fucking, especially pays the money that they do to live in that fucking rat infested. And not, I don't even like calling it rat infested because rats are fine people, but New Yorkers are not. and then another in hate crime news, because hate crimes are everywhere and they're a very big issue, and we don't need to make them up. All of the ones that happen are real. Oh, except for this one. This guy was found, and look at that guy. He's a swastika, you know, tattooing. What is it?
Kind
spray
of a
painting.
chocolate white supremacist, okay?
Well, you know, white
He's
supremacists in their pajama pants. That's known. That's the known white supremacist uniform there.
Yeah.
He's a 17-year-old kid, but I mean, like, why the fuck is a 17-year-old kid trying to fake a hate crime? You know, what sort of shit is being pumped into a 17-year-old kid's head that he thinks that, like, the solution to, like, you know, problem, I don't know, maybe it doesn't, this wasn't, like, some sort of, you know, plea to get attention to hate crimes. Maybe he's just an asshole. I don't know. But it just seems weird to me that somebody so young is so motivated to bring forth attention to hate crimes, you know, occurring to minorities.
Well, you've been on Twitter lately. It's it's on social media kind of.
He's also the owner of a Nissan
the same.
Infinity, and you know, so you can make what conclusions you will out of that. You know, those Nissan Infinity owners are fucking assholes. No, I have no idea. I just thought you could spend a minute to fuck with Nissan Infinity people. You know, I'm actually don't even know it from Adam, to be honest. And then on more January 6th news, because we had that acquitted person last week, and now there's a filing that states 20 federal quote unquote assets were embedded in the Capitol on January 6th. Now, there's a certain thing to note is that this is a filing from the attorney for the defense, like to making his case as why the charges should be dismissed. So I think this is in his motion to dismiss. And so he is claiming that at least 20 FBI and ATF assets were embedded around the Capitol on January 6th. However, it is a legal motion that, you know, is, I think, subject to perjury laws. I'm no fucking lawyer here, so I could be wrong. But I generally don't think that you're allowed to just say false, like provably false things on motions, legal motions submitted to judges. I'm sure there's a consequence for you know, writing down a lie to a judge. And so it is, you know, taken with a grain of salt that it is the defense claiming this in order to get their clients dismissed, the charges dismissed.
Right.
But it's not nothing either. And yeah, so you also have to keep in mind that the defense does have access to discovery, right? And so they have ideally evidence that's provided to them from the prosecution, any relevant evidence that they that the prosecution would have about the subject or about the case, that they have on there, any interviews that they've conducted with witnesses or what have you, experts or anything like that, anything that the prosecution has in terms of being able to bring a case forward. Defense would have access to that evidence through discovery. And so he claims also that not one iota of proof the defense pre-planned or had any, quote, intention, design, or scheme to specifically enter the Capitol building on J6, unquote. So that's what they claim. And that's why they want it dismissed. But that they would have that information. There would be something that they would have access to with discovery. But it's the defense, so there's that. But doesn't seem very doubtful to me. That doesn't seem like such a wild fucking claim that
No, not at all. I mean, given what we know, no, I wouldn't doubt it at all.
There was that one video, that one guy, I forget his name, but who he was like saying, even like the day before, like, we're going in there and stuff, and like he was very clearly like riling people up, and even people there were like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? And so yeah, there was the smell of Fed was in the air that day for sure.
Oh, big time.
And then in other news, we have inflation hitting 4-decade high, to the surprise of not a single fucking libertarian. It's just come on, this is fucking, inflation is a layup for libertarians. It's just something that we like tack on to every other argument and every other like situation ever. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, the money supply being controlled by the state, it's just a fucking recipe for disaster and inflation and boom and bust cycles. We even have an entire theory of the boom and bust cycle in Austrian economics, explains it all, fucking talks about interest rates and how they're used to manipulate prices, and how this is a recipe for disaster and leads to busts. And there were books written about the housing crash in 2008 before 2008, right? There's plenty of predictions of bubbles that are going on, and just thorough explanations of this kind of shit.
And like, keep in mind that 8.5% is like kind of I think it's kind of a low estimate, because if you measure it the way they did, I think they were saying back in the 80s, it's something like 19.5. It's like 19.5%, which tracks more honestly to me when you look at like basic like not commodities, but like food and stuff is up like 30%. That makes a lot more sense to me than 8.5.
Yeah, and so what the Labor Department and what a lot of mainstream economists define inflation as is the prices that consumers pay for goods and services. It's not, whereas I would actually have to look it up what the Austrian definition of inflation is, but it's basically the expansion. Inflation is the expansion of the money supply, and deflation is the contraction of the money supply, and so it's directly tied to the supply and the value of the dollar itself. Whereas I even heard this excuse in like a fucking comment section of YouTube the other day, where I pointed out that that this money printing causes inflation because it's an expansion of the money supply, and somebody's like, well, no, it only counts as inflation if there isn't an increase in the supply to match that, so that like prices remain stable. And what they don't get is that this inflation then causes malinvestment, because more people want to save under high inflation because it's more worth it for them, right? When interest rates lower, then basically you don't gain as much from saving your money. You spend it as soon as you have it, right? And so this sort of thing is it doesn't really fucking, basically my point is that it really doesn't matter if supply increases or doesn't to match the money supply, because that supply is false signals. It's fucking fake. And so,
Right.
and that's exactly what happens with something like the housing crisis, where it was like, oh, we have we have this incentive to invest in all this housing because interest rates are low, so we're going to do that. But then since the demand for that and the real actual like monetary backing behind it wasn't actually real, then we had a surplus of housing that wasn't being used and a crash in the market because of that. And there's a whole bunch of other like details and shit that I'm probably mixing up and glossing over, but the point is that that's the reason why you see like this low kind of estimation on inflation of just the price you pay for goods and services, because that's a very shallow way to examine inflation and to talk about it without getting into the importance of the actual money supply itself and what's happening to that. Because they can't do that, because as Keynesians, as people who think of Keynesianism as the mainstream, they think that that's what the government's supposed to do, and what's supposed to be done with the economy is that you're driving spending and you're controlling the money supply in order to facilitate that. And I'm not going to pay for the fucking Wall Street Journal, so we're only looking at the headline and just commenting on that, because fuck them boys. In oil news, though, Biden wants to resume leasing oil and gas drilling on federal lands, and he wants to help lower gas prices that way. Now, this is a good thing, sure, fine. More oil being drilled is great, but the funny thing about this for me was that it was a couple weeks ago that Jen Psaki was asked about what Joe Biden was going to do about the gas prices and his culpability and where he stands and kind of in being responsible for all this stuff. I don't remember the exact question that she was asked, but then she tried to deflect blame onto the oil companies themselves, because she was like, they have a bunch of contracts that they're just not using. They just have, they have these contracts to drill, and they're just not using them. They're just it's just their faults. If they just drilled more on the contracts that they already had and on the leases that they already had, then we'd be fine. But then if that was the case, then why would we need to do this move and resume selling more leases? If the problem really is that the current leases aren't being used, then what the fuck is more leases going to do?
Yeah, I mean, what if that's what's actually going on? Then they would just not use those either. Kind of seems to be the logic that follows from that. Like, what if they just don't use those? Okay, so which one's true? Like,
yeah, no. So that was just another quick one that I wanted to point out. It just seems like these motherfuckers can't get anything straight, and if they think that it's just like shouting Putin and shouting the corporations are evil, that it's on NBC News like, oh, he's resuming this. Well, just we have a fucking 2-week attention span, so we're not going to talk about how weird this is, or how this doesn't line up with the excuses that we've already been given.
Man, it seems to be how it goes. Every 2 weeks it changes.
And those of us who point out, we're like, what do you mean they got, like, why the fuck wouldn't, like, what purpose did they have? Because I mean, sure, you have the rising prices, but you're selling way fucking less, because when you have higher prices, like, yes, oil or gasoline is something of an inelastic commodity, and for those in economics, you have elastic goods and inelastic goods. An elastic one is something that like can easily be foregoed if it goes beyond a price that you're unwilling to pay for it. Something like your morning coffee or luxury items, things like that. Whereas something inelastic is like gasoline. It's like the price does affect how much you purchase, but it can't eliminate it, because your demand for it isn't elastic. It can't go up or down as much because you need a certain amount of fuel to get through your daily life. And food is another one that's inelastic. Like certain food items might be more elastic because they might be considered luxuries or splurges, and so if those prices increased, or maybe they're easily substituted out, like if the price of coffee gets too expensive, maybe you switch to tea, or those sorts of. Anyways, that's my point, is that oil is somewhat inelastic and generally inelastic, but also it still stands to reason that you're gonna fucking make less, like you're gonna sell less, people are going to travel less, right? They're going to go out less to do things that they see as frivolous if it's going to cost them 3 times as much at the fucking pump to get there, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And so from the oil corporation standpoint, yes, they can make more money if the price increases, but then if their also costs are increasing as well due to inflation of just generally the prices are going up, then that eats up into the profits. And also just the fact that higher prices means selling less also eats into profits as well. I don't know. I'm not the smartest dude in the world when it comes to running an oil company. I've only done it a short amount of time, maybe 3 minutes, but so maybe there's a bunch of details that I'm missing there. But again, it seems counterintuitive for oil companies to just not use leases that they have, and then to be granted more leases that presumably they haven't been. It's fucking weird.
They just didn't have enough. They needed a few more, and then now they're going to use them all.
They only use like 3% of their leases, so as long as we increase the size of the pie, then that 3% also increases along with it. And then what do we have here? Oh yeah, Shanghai is going crazy. Have you seen this shit?
Yeah.
Oh.
Control your soul's desire for freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, so even mainstream places are picking up on this and going, what in the fuck is going on with China and their drones telling people that their souls have no need for freedom? And it was fucking crazy. Also, have you heard of comedian Andrew Schultz?
Yes.
Yeah, he's like
I'm not super familiar with him, but I know of him.
I think he's Italian, so don't hold that against him. Also Scottish, but anyways, but he's a really funny guy because he like does a lot of crowd work in his act. He's really good at like just on the fly, like pointing out like, and he's very like kind of culturally like aware in terms of like if he sees like a Pakistani person in the audience, he could make like a Pakistani related joke, right, or like reference like the language and everything like that. And so he's really good at like just kind of picking up little details about a person and really just roasting him for that, or just using that as a springboard for a joke. But his podcast, I think 5 or 6 days ago, they were looking at a bunch of I guess partially about like the Shanghai stuff, just because like they wanted to talk about, because like a lot of mainstream news was talking about it. But he had this whole bit at the beginning where he was like basically like faking like he was had gone to Shanghai, and then he was coming back and like basically giving like the pro-China like version of events, where he's like, yeah, everything is great over there, they're just jailing some dissidents, and making sure people are safe. And like all his buddies on the podcast are like, something's weird about you, Andrew, like I don't know what's he's like, no, nothing's there's no problem here, nobody threatened me, that's it was a really good bit. I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, check out Andrew Schultz if you want a good laugh about Shanghai. But yeah, that's just going on. I mean, what can you say about authoritarianism? Like how long do we have to beat a fucking dead horse? And people are like, yeah, U.S. is not bad. We're not doing that kind of stuff. And
yes,
yeah, not only not yet, but it's just like it's not for lack of like want, right? It's not for like lack of trying. Because if you look at Twitter and you look at some of these fucking politicians, it's like they're all for that. They're ready to fucking pull the trigger. It's just they haven't had the opportunity yet because America's better than China.
Yeah, that's some seriously dystopian shit.
And there's also BLM news. There's a little bit of BLM news. It's great. So
did they buy another house?
No, they didn't buy another house. What happened is that they were recently told that they're going to be, it's basically they're going to be audited, right? That there's going to, they are being kind of put on the coals, as it were, because they don't have any financial transparency. They're not disclosing financial records that they need to, to account for the spending that they've been doing, and everything. And one BLM co-founder found these transparency laws very triggering. Like literally, that's what she described this as, is triggering. And I want to go. Is this the whole thing, or is this? Oh no, I'm not.
Accountant handle that. Like I don't know what that is. It is such a trip now.
The Black woman-led organization that's hundreds a year.
Yep.
But
I think this is the
first
part that we need.
Black-led organization that we know got money. Hello, ACLU, y'all got money.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's asking for their 990s.
That's right.
And so,
Well, first of all, I doubt very much that the federal government is not asking the ACLU for their 990s. The only and then the 990 is the financial disclosure form or report or whatever the fuck it is, or it's a structure. Anyways, but yeah, copies of their 990 forms. There it is. Yeah, which charities are required by law to disclose to the public upon request. So yeah, their ACLU is also required to disclose that upon request as well. And it's just, this lovely sort of deflection game where they're just like, oh, well, what about everybody else? It's like, they have been playing by those rules, motherfucker.
Yeah, the ACLU especially is a funny, I guess, target to bring up, because they're a pretty big one. They've been around for a while. I highly doubt that the ACLU just isn't disclosing their spending. Like, I don't think that they would get away with that.
Especially in the way that these guys got caught doing it, because they're just straight up just like, yeah, we're not going to give it to you. And it's just like, okay, well, like, you gotta, if you're telling the government you're a charity and you're not doing this to enrich yourself, then you gotta show what you use the money on, and prove that it's not yourself. And
It's just one of those situations where it's like, fuck the government and the IRS and stuff, because I couldn't give a shit. But like, I want to see it because it'll be funny for them to finally either scramble to account for, or to bullshit where all this money's going, or it'll just be really funny to see that they've been a scam this whole time, kind of like people have been saying that they're just predatory and they're using a bunch of pissed off people to make money. I think they've got 3 different houses so far that they've been caught buying in gated communities.
Oh yeah, and sure, it does, whether or not the state has good or bad charity regulations or rules is really besides the point. We're not in favor of that sort of thing, but also just on a market-based standpoint, like if people are going around claiming they're a charity and to do things in a non-profit basis, then there's always obviously going to be a demand for some sort of transparency in terms of what they're doing, and
like proof that they're actually doing it, that they're actually sending that money to do something.
And regulatory bodies, like a lot of people don't understand, don't need to be government regulations. There's tons of private regulation already going on in the world that people really don't even pay attention to or don't really notice. The one that a lot of libertarians classically bring up is Underwriters Laboratory. And do you know about Underwriters Laboratory?
I do not.
So Underwriters Laboratory is a private electronics regulatory body. And what they do is they basically test electronics to make sure that they don't kill you, that they're safe. In terms of their regular usage, right? Like if you plug in a toaster, that it's not going to create a fire, or this sort of stuff. And you actually can look at a lot of electronics at the bottom of them, and they'll have a little stamp on them that says UL on them. And actually, I think the UL even did a certification or a test on the strength of the steel in the beams of the Twin Towers, because there was a lot of like a fucking conspiracy theories about 9/11 being an inside job, because jet fuel can't
Melt steel beams.
melt steel beams and all that. And so they had that was the first time I had ever heard of them. But then when I became more of a libertarian, I heard about them just as being the sort of general regulatory body in terms of testing electronic products and putting their UL certified stamp of approval on them. And then so what happens then is that a lot of retailers look for UL certification before they're going to stock that electronic, and they'll refuse to stock electronics that have not been tested through UL and certified to be to be safe. And there you have stuff like the Better Business Bureau and Consumer Reports and fucking Yelp. And sure, there's a lot of these aren't perfect. Better Business Bureau is being accused of accepting money to, delete bad reviews and things. But when the demand for regulation goes up in the market because it's not being provided by the government, then the competition for that regulation also comes about too, because then you have this being an opened up market. You have more people saying, okay, well, if this guy is accepting money for good review or to delete bad reviews of his clients, then how about you go to me, because I don't fucking do that shit, and you can't trust this guy's reviews or the reviews on this guy's site because all the bad ones are being purged, and competition arises. The better product wins out. And
Right.
and so point is, private regulation can occur on a market without government. So when we talk about charities being transparent and not disclosing their financial spending, then whether it happens to the state or not, or whether disclosing to the state or not, is fucking neither here nor there. But the fact that they're against this sort of transparency and disclosure to begin with is the problem. Whether it's to the government, to us directly. But here, I think further on, she's gonna, because this is just the interview lady. The other person is the actual BLM person lady.
It is a painful,
Yes.
it is a painful opportunity that comes at a cost. But what is the opportunity to set a new standard for transparency and accountability that hopefully will be willing to ask across the board, and not just of the Black woman-led organization that seems to always be setting the new standards?
That's exactly right. It's a really good question. I think, first of all, number one, I actually did not know what 990s were before all of this happened.
It's confusing.
So part of the opportunity here is to educate our
Yes.
folks. Like, something's being weaponized against us that many people don't even know and honestly don't care about.
I didn't know about them until they started
Weaponized.
asking us for them for COVID relief funds. I said, you need my 990. I had to call the
Yes.
accountant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the accountant handled that.
Amazing. So like, there's somebody whose job it is that you like hire to figure. This is fucking fantastic. But yeah, it's being weaponized against them, and like, oh, I didn't even know about it. It's like, well, I mean, it's all laid out. Like, this is not a fucking mystery. But, go figure.
Like, I don't know what that is. It is such a trip now to hear the word, the term 990s. I'm like, ugh, it's like triggering.
April 15th is next week.
But
Taxes.
But what? I feel like there's many opportunities here. One,
So yeah, I just wanted to point out that she found it very, very triggering, and they lament these taxes and all, but I doubt very much that these people think taxation is theft, that they actually are crusaders for lower taxes. I'm gonna guess. Take a wild guess.
Go out on a limb a little bit.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I'm gonna just assume, my biased point of view here is that these ladies are not anti-tax crusaders in the least bit. Now, if we want to switch to war real quick, because that's always the subject of the week, we have more warmongering from a U.S. senator, Democratic senator, of course. He signaled that he wants the U.S. to send troops into Ukraine. He was asked on CBS's Face the Nation about comments they made last week to the University of Michigan, where he said that Biden and the Congress should, quote, come to a common position about when we are willing to go to the next step and to send not just arms, but troops to aid in the defense of Ukraine. If the answer is never, then we are inviting another level of escalation in brutality by Putin. And
wait. So he's by the U.S. not sending troops. That's escalating the issue.
that's inviting escalation by not escalating.
By not escalating.
Then it's inviting that Putin escalates. You see?
It's like if we don't do it, then Putin will. Like, okay.
Well, he's on the track in one way, in that if we continue like sending him arms, if we sending Ukraine arms, if we instill like a no-fly zone, that kind of shit, then maybe Putin's gonna get mad enough to do. But I don't. It doesn't really like he doesn't really seem like he's adamant in like truly escalating it all. Because I mean, he pulled back for a bit. I don't know. I'm not following the frontline changes as closely. I think the odds are of DTM from chat says, what do you think are the odds of us sending U.S. troops? Thanks to Biden, Reddick's been escalating, and Zelensky's prepping us for gassing their own people to Electric Boogaloo. Looks more and more likely. So when I didn't pull up the article, but I did have it at some point when what's her name, Jen Psaki, was asked about this guy's comments. She reiterated that they had no plans to send troops over there at all. And I was going to bring up another article about the US's intentions and the West's kind of intentions in this whole deal, but it was kind of a long article. And then there was like an interview with the guy who wrote the article that I also kind of wanted to look at, but again, it's kind of long. But essentially, the plan is very similar to the plan in like using the Mujahideen against the Russians, back in the fucking 80s, which was,
and that went super well.
Yeah, which is basically we're arming them, we're prepping, we're poking the hornet's nest, as it were, using them, and so that Russia can then get into conflict with them, and we have more excuses to do the things that we want to do, and to implement stuff, especially domestically over here, that we want to do. And yeah, we're just stoking the flames of war in order to kind of do another proxy deal. Whole proxy wars are great. DC loves proxy war, a good proxy war. John McCain, if he were alive, man, he would proxy war all up in this bitch. So let's hear this guy real quick.
In some public remarks this week, you said the country needs to talk about when it might be willing to send troops to Ukraine. You said if the answer is never, then we are inviting another level of escalation and brutality by Putin. Are you arguing that President Biden was wrong when he said he would not send troops to Ukraine? Are you asking him to set a red line?
Margaret, I think those of us in Congress who have a critical role in setting foreign policy and in advising the president in terms of his decisions as commander-in-chief need to look clearly at the level of brutality. This is a moment of enormous challenge for all of us, and I deeply respect President Biden's leadership in pulling together the West, in imposing crushing sanctions on Russia, and in bringing to this fight countries that had stayed on the sidelines before. I think President Biden's leadership has been steady and constructive, but this is a critical moment. If Vladimir Putin, who has shown us how brutal he can be, is allowed to just continue to massacre civilians, to commit war crimes throughout Ukraine without NATO, without the West coming more forcefully to his aid, I deeply worry that what's going to happen next is that we will see Ukraine turn into Syria. Mm-hmm. The American people cannot turn away from this tragedy in Ukraine. I think the history of the 21st century turns on how fiercely we defend freedom in Ukraine, and that Putin will only stop when we stop him.
So, amazing war mongering aside, this whole idea of defending democracy in Ukraine, defending freedom Ukraine. I mean, I know we've talked about Azov a bunch. We've talked about how they torture people. We talked about how Zelensky outlawed all of his political opposition. But there's a lot more just in terms of details there that I didn't know about. That was recently written about in the Gray Zone, April 17th. And some of these I have to kind of be careful scrolling. I might have to turn off the stream, like the stream of my desktop on the stream itself, because there's some like videos, or not videos, but pictures of tortured people and dead bodies that I'm not sure
Right.
I can show on YouTube. Like I can still keep the screen sharing up for Discord for you, but I might at least in certain parts of this turn it off, because yeah, as I scroll down there might be some things that YouTube don't like so much. But so the first bit of it talks about how there's the whole preserve their democracy, line and excuse. But there's been a lot of kidnapping, torture, and assassination of local Ukrainian lawmakers that were accused of collaborating with Russia. That's a really big thing. And of course, the Internal Affairs Ministry advisor Anton Gerashenko states that there is one less traitor in Ukraine after a Ukrainian mayor was murdered after accused of collaborating with Russia. I'm going to turn off the desktop on the stream. Let me see here. So there's this security service called the SBU, and they're the enforcement arm of the officially authorized campaign of repression, I guess is the way that's phrased. They receive training from the CIA and coordinate with paramilitaries like the Azov Battalion. And they have been... SBU has spent the past weeks filling its vast archipelago of torture dungeons with political dissidents. So they got a bunch of torture dungeons, as you do. You got their own, Guantanamos here and there. And political dissidents are getting the brunt of it. And torture and enforcement disappearance is common practices with Ukraine's SBU. The report says, or the article says, and it's been going on since the 23rd, or after the coup in 2013, 2014.
Of course, that's when we installed a bunch of fucking neo-Nazis.
Exactly, and there were a lot of decommunization laws in the UK that were passed that basically, they could use as an excuse to pursue any leftists that they saw, like any anti-right activists, and they can use the decommunization laws in order to do some horrible shit.
We tortured some folks.
Yeah, as you do, And Human Rights Watch in the UN has even accused them of systematically torturing political opponents, which, I mean, those guys have Saudi Arabia on the board. So when they're going, hey, it looks like you tortured people, man. Like, that seems like bad. It's like, well, fuck.
It's got to be pretty bad.
Yeah. And and there was official endorsement, like we said, from the Internal Affairs Minister. And there's not just that one mayor. So there was this mayor, Vladimir Stok, who was he's an eastern city in the Ukrainian-controlled side of Luhansk. And so that's the region that is considered to be like, it's been bombed a lot the past 8 years because there's a bunch of quote-unquote Russian separatists. They're the region that wanted, in conjunction with the Donetsk region, who wanted to basically secede and become independent. And then Putin recognized that independence. And they're like, hey, man, can we join you? And Putin was like, nah, I'm not willing to go that far, but you're independent. And so this guy was kidnapped by men in military uniform and shot in the heart. And there's his dead body, which I can't show on YouTube. And And yeah, and this is the guy who Grushenko said one less traitor in Ukraine. And where is the next guy? There's another guy who was found 6 days later, found murdered, and he allegedly entered into negotiations with Russian military to organize a humanitarian corridor for the evacuation of a city's residents. And of course, ultra nationalists in Ukraine didn't like that and killed him. March 24th, 2 weeks after that, or a little over 2 weeks after that, the mayor of another city in Ukraine released a video asking the Zelensky and his administration for the release of his daughter, who was being held hostage by agents of the Ukrainian SBU intelligence agency.
Jesus.
So it was a member of the Ukrainian negotiating team who was killed in broad daylight after the first rounds of talks with Russia. He was accused of treason by a local Ukrainian media station, or I don't know if it's a station, but yeah, the media, saying he was treasonous for entering into those talks. And Zelensky himself got on a video and said that there would be consequences for collaborators. Obviously, there was, heads of the political opposition found themselves the targets of the SBU as well. This guy was arrested, held in a prison basement for weeks, and had been obviously fucking hit in the face before this photo was taken. There's media outlets that have been closed. Again, more accusations of kidnapping, imprisonment. There is this March 3rd in the city of Dnipro, SBU officers accompanied by Azov ultranationalists raided the home of activists with the Livizja left organization, which has organized against social spending cuts and right-wing media propaganda. One activist said the Azov member cut off my hair with a knife. The state security agents proceeded to torture her husband, Alexander Majushenko, pressing a gun barrel to his head and forcing him to repeatedly belt out the national salute, Slava Ukraini. Then they put bags over our heads, tied our hands with tape, and took us to the SBU building in a car. There, they continued to interrogate us and threatened to cut off our ears. Majushenko's wife told the leftist German publication Junge Welt. And there's his bloody, tortured body. Another person's eyes were gouged out. Like an eye was gouged out before he was killed. We've seen people tied to lampposts and tortured, and faces painted, and all sorts of stuff. Pants pulled down. Where's the last one? SBU arresting civilians. This guy is taunting the wife or the fiance of a Russian POW, saying that he's going to castrate her husband. And this was on a pro-Ukrainian Telegram channel called White Lives Matter. It's in Ukrainian, so if I play the video, then it's just going to be him speaking in Ukrainian. There's reports of Ukrainian soldiers calling family of deceased to mock and swear at them using the phones of their victims. And so they used his the face scan to unlock it. And they were probably alive when they unlocked it and then were killed. And so here's the gouged out eye of that captured Russian soldier. Again, stuff that I'm it's still this old shit. Well, great. I didn't have it before. Whatever.
No, but hey, listen, this is war, right? This is what happens. It's fine because everybody does it, and torture is just part of it.
Swastikas carved onto people. So,
apparently, this is just the kind of stuff that happens in war. This is normal. Nobody's got clean hands, and therefore, this really just isn't a big deal.
Yeah, that's again the goalposts continue to get moved. But this exact, like, in light of all of these details, it's especially just disgusting and just like how the fuck do these fucking people sleep? Like people like Chris Coons, when they're talking about defending democracy and just defending freedom and standing up for what's right, and like the people that we're arming are doing this shit.
Yeah, where does this fucking narrative that Ukraine is this um this like liberal democracy that's really concerned with human rights and freedom, and like where the fuck does that come from?
It doesn't. It's just because we're allied with them and because they are friendly to us. I mean, just we're allied with Saudi Arabia. We're allied with Israel. We're allied with all sorts of countries that are definitely not liberal democracies in any way, shape, or form, and they're very oppressive and very authoritarian against their own citizens, against the surrounding area, and it's strategic, right? It's all smoke and mirrors when it comes to the righteousness of our actual entanglements. There's just what is politically convenient, what can be used to expand the power of the state, and there's no pretense for any like righteousness or goodness when it comes to any of that shit, because they just don't. Well, I mean, there is pretense, there is the how do you put it, like just the whitewashing of it all, but yeah, it's all hollow. It's always has been hollow. It never was. It's just like we saw in the videos on the War on Terror that we watched the past couple weeks. Was just they're all fucking power games, so these politicians can carry out things that they would want to do, and there's no rhyme or reason behind it in terms of actually bettering the American people or bettering the people of the areas that we're being involved in.
Like, yeah, it has nothing to do with democracy or freedom or any of this fucking shit. It's just an easy way to sucker people into supporting it without asking too many questions, it seems like.
Most definitely.
And like, you point this shit out. Like, people, even like, I guess like what, 20 minutes ago, somebody was talking about how it's a complete myth that you've got all of this horrible shit happening in Ukraine and that there's like Nazis in the military and stuff, and it's actually like 0.01% of the whole military are actually Nazis and all this other shit. And that it's just Russian propaganda. If you talk about any of this crap that's going on, it's like, I don't understand the knee-jerk reaction. Like, you can't criticize anything that's happening, or it's Russian propaganda.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of like these leftist like political streamers, like Destiny, and like there's another pair of them called Sitch and Adam, where they're kind of like center leftists. They're not progressives in any way, shape, or form, but they're just normally leftists. And yeah, they had so they had one comedian. What was it? He's a famous comedian, Bert Kreischer. Yeah, he was on because he's a regular guest on Jimmy Dore's live stream, his podcast. And Jimmy Dore, who is a progressive, he's I think just a straight up socialist. I know, but like he argues for stuff like Medicare for all and everything. But he used to work for the Young Turks, but then left the Young Turks in a big scandal because he basically was like, these guys are fucking grifters and they're afraid to tell the truth about anything. And as long as if it hurts the Prague party line, then they won't say it, and fuck these guys. And so he made his own shit. But all that was to say that he also regularly has on Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone, which we've looked at a lot of their articles and a lot of their reporting on there. And this streamer Sitch, a PSA Sitch, basically is just always being he was basically debating the other comedian who would come on the channel to talk to them, Bert Kreischer. He's like, yo, but your boy Jimmy Dore, like, he's talking with these guys, Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, and they're just basically repeating Russian propaganda. And for somebody who like doesn't know who Max Blumenthal or Aaron Mate are, it's just okay. Maybe, you just see them, and it's like, oh, they're saying that, the 2014 was a coup, the Maidan coup, and this guy Sitch thinks that that's like a crazy fucking idea, and so he's like, oh, they're just repeating propaganda. That's all they're doing, right? But Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate are like two of like the most long working like anti-war reporters that have been doing this shit for like fucking decades. They've been their journalistic like chops, or like their resume is full of fucking bangers, dude. Like Max Blumenthal's book Goliath on Israel, about him going to Israel and using his birthright as a Jew to travel freely in Israel and interview people, what people really think and what people are really being taught in Israeli schools and all this stuff. It's like, this fucking asshole YouTuber like has no fucking clue what it takes to actually like the type of reporting and the actual type of like, fact finding that people like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal do as like part of their job. And to just write all of this shit off is like, it's just he just heard Putin say it, and then he just said it was true as well, and he didn't double check it.
Propaganda.
And he just, he's just repeating it, and maybe. The funny part was, he's like, I'm not even calling him like a liar or like this and that. It's just like I accidentally repeated Russian propaganda, and I didn't even fucking think about it. Like, I didn't bother to learn about the history of this fucking region. I just decided to, get on here and make it my job to just repeat some shit that, like, it's the dumbest fucking shit ever. It's so just reflexive and so it's just grasping at straws. That's all it is.
Again, it's like it works. You would be astounded how well. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't be astounded because you probably have to deal with it on a daily basis. Or at least you see it on a daily basis. But like, it's fucking astounding how well it works.
Yeah, no, you forget sometimes, and then like you come across an NPC who just rattles off these fucking lines over, and oh shit, people believe this. I'm sorry, I saw through that shit half a second into the fucking speech, right, or half a second into this whole spiel. It was obvious bullshit to me, and I didn't realize that there were people like you who will hear it and they go, yeah, that makes total fucking sense, just whatever. And that doesn't, my fault. Not everybody's as based as I am. Not everybody's always.
I underestimated how stupid the average person is.
And so the next article we're talking about is Zelensky and the fact that he's not going to give up the Donetsk or Luhansk regions in order to end the war. He's like, nope, we're not gonna give up any bit of Ukraine, even though there's mostly Russian ethnic Russians there. Now, the common retort to this, right, the debunking and the epic, riposte to this whole idea of like pointing out that ethnic Russians make up the majority of people in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions is that the Soviet Union purged all the Ukrainians that used to live there. And okay, like I'm sure that happened. Like, I'm not fucking doubting that. It sounds right up the Soviet Union's alley to purge some people in the Holomdor. I think it was the Holomdor that killed a bunch of these motherfuckers. And yeah, okay, a couple decades ago that happened. Is there Ukrainian, like a large Ukrainian section, like trying to go back there? Or are they trying to retake, like that region from the Russian, like, people that were moved in? Like, what fault is it of the Russian people that currently live there? That happened in the past? Like, this is, this is current possession, right? This is what's going on now. People living there don't want to be part of Ukraine anymore. They want to be independent, regardless of the fact that people were purged in the past, that, like, so they're not there anymore to want to be independent or to want to be part of Ukraine. And so what, we're just supposed to, like, keep this part of the country Ukrainian against the will of the people who now live there now,
That
because
fucking live there.
because a government that doesn't exist anymore did some fucking shitty shit to people who no longer live there as a result of that. Like, I don't know. I don't understand what this defense is supposed to do other than be like, well, Russia bad, Russia the real, one at fault here. It's like, okay, well, regardless of what Soviet Union, a different country, did to the people who used to live there, the people who currently live there don't want to be Ukrainian. So it's not a rebuttal. It's not like a fucking smacking away to then just be like, well, they're only Russian majority because Soviet Union killed a bunch of Ukrainians. Like, even if that's the case, that doesn't change the fact that, like, these people have a certain desire.
Live there now don't want to be Ukrainian. They want to be part of Russia,
And
or
not-
at least they want to be independent. Like,
Yeah, and not only that, but as a result of their desires, they were bombed for 8 years. Like, so that's not fucking nothing. There's like, if you're gonna be like, well, this region is Ukraine and we want them to be Ukraine, then like you can't bomb it and they go, oh, it was just full of Russian separatists. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is the whole like Schrodinger's Russian separatist. Whereas, like, if you're just talking about the region and wanting the region to be separated from Ukraine, well, then no, that's Ukraine with Ukrainians there. It's Ukraine, man. It's fucking Ukraine. And they're like, okay, but you guys bombed it. Well, it's like, well, we bombed the Russian separatists. Well, you bombed Ukraine though. So no, we bombed Russian separatists. I was like, but you just told me that this fucking place is Ukraine. So which fucking, it's Schrodinger's Russian separatists is, it's just. This is the degree of sanity when it comes to the portrayal of what the fuck is going on in the region. And so he's trying to wave off the fact that the region, the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine weren't historically Ukraine, like, until Soviet Union got involved. Same with like Crimea. That Crimea was, I think it was Crimea that was given to Ukraine in like the 70s by the Soviet Union or something, and it was done so because, I mean, it was all Soviet Union anyway, so it didn't really matter that like a certain portion was then given to quote unquote Ukraine when they're all part of. So it was like a formality, just a sort of show gift. And then now they're using it as like, well, no, Crimea is Ukraine. It's Ukraine and Crimea. It should be part of Ukraine. Well, it's not really. It wasn't really, like, not in the same sense, is it? But they're like, now is like, oh, we're not gonna take anybody else's territory, but we're not gonna give up our own. And so it's like, is it your own? I don't know. But the point is that this path to peace is definitely cut off, where they're like, okay, we're not gonna consider the wishes of the people in the Donetsk and Luhansk. What they want, they're part of us. Unless we bomb them, then they're Russian separatists.
unless we're currently bombing them, and then they're Russians again. Depends on the day,
And and the last one thing that I had was the thing on this NATO advisor, who basically explains the reasoning and the process by which this reasoning comes about, of using Ukraine as a sacrificial lamb to weaken Russia, this whole proxy situation. But it's a 40-minute interview, and I figure since you got an early day tomorrow, that we could save this for another time, or just it'd probably be like another hour or so to get through this. And so
okay.
Yeah. So I figured that we would save this. This was going to be my last thing, but since we've already been going for over an hour, and wanted to kind of keep this one a quicker episode, I think that that bit should be the last. What the fuck? Oh, I was talking about something that I wanted to talk about. Oh, that's right, e-bike thing. Yeah, so to just kind of wrap up, talking about some personal life stuff.
Okay.
Like I explained to you before we started the stream, I bought an e-bike, and it's practical for me. I live in city, pretty urban and suburban areas, so getting around here, it's not the most like bike friendly area, especially like getting into the more urban areas. But generally, I mean, we got decent bike lanes and all that stuff. But for one reason was obviously the fucking prices, right? Gas prices were getting out of control and all that. But I actually have been using my car lately because my registration was expired. And I paid my registration, but in California, they have smog laws that every 2 years you need to get a smog check. And in order to pass the smog check, if your check engine light is on, it's an automatic fail. And my check engine light is on, and it's a fucking...
For any reason at all?
Any reason at all. It does not have to be emissions related at all. And
That's
so mine, I think...
so fucking stupid.
Mine, I think my mechanic said it was like a timing belt thing. And I've gotten pulled over like 3 different times for expired registration. You've been given tickets every time. And then the tickets, because I can't take care of it because the repair costs like over fucking $2,000, and
Right.
I don't have that money like just lying around to do that shit.
Yeah.
And,
it does.
and so I was just driving with an expired tags, and I at a time I could go several months without being pulled over for it, but then I just got pulled over like 3 times within like a 2-month period, and each time I got a ticket for it, and then each time it doesn't get taken care of in a timely manner, that ticket goes from like 25, like a $25 fix it, because ideally I fix it, pay $25 and it's done, right? That's what they think. But then it's like, okay, but in order to fix that, I need a $2,000 repair on my fucking car. And so when I don't fix it in a timely manner, they increase the fine to like $300 something instead. So I was like, okay, well now I'm like in less of a position to be able to take care of this, motherfuckers. And then on top of that, they suspended my license because I couldn't fucking take care of that. So it's just like, okay, now I'm risking getting arrested as a misdemeanor just because I couldn't get a smog because of a non-emissions related reason to get my registration, which shouldn't even be a fucking like, you know, it's car registration. Like, this is the fucking thing that you're really like, you know, driving my ass to the fucking grindstone over, like, is fucking registration. And so yeah, I stopped using my car for a long time, and
no kidding.
Just taking the bus and taking the bus, taking Ubers, right? But that's fucking expensive. I was like 15, like I would take the bus to work, and then by the time I'm done with work, because I'm closing a restaurant, I'm out of there like at 10:30, 11:30 at night, sometimes as late as midnight. Right. And the buses stopped running around my area at that time, so it's an Uber back. So it's like $15 to $20 per night just on fucking going home.
At least, yeah.
And so yeah, all that was a pile of bullshit. And so I was like, fuck this shit, I'm getting a bike. And then I saw that, you know, I was looking through electric bikes because my ass is not fit enough to bike the 10 miles from my house to or my apartment over to work. So yeah, I was looking at e-bike options, and I found this pretty good one for like $1,000.
Nice.
And it goes, yeah, like I said, up to, well, you can change the setting on it to basically increase it to pedal assist up to 28 miles an hour, which is you know, it's zooming if you're on a bicycle, but then it classifies as like there's 3 classes of e-bikes in California, 2 federally, but 3 in California. And like there's certain, basically class 3 e-bikes, they since they go that fast, they can't go on certain bike lanes that are like, they're like bike lanes that also pedestrians go on. Like there's one that goes along the beach, like just alongside the beach, and so a lot of people go rollerblading and just go for walking along that bike lane, but also there's bikes there as well. And so you can't be going 28 miles an hour along that bike lane. And so if my bike has the capability to do that, then I can't go on those style of bike lanes at all. So which means that basically my bike has the ability to like restrict that, so that it's you can turn it on or turn it off. And so if you turn it off, then you're allowed to do that. Honestly, it doesn't really matter too much, because like unless I'm like fucking tearing down one of those bike lanes at 28 miles an hour, it's not like just cops are pulling me over and checking like, you know, how fast my bike can go, like what class my bike is or anything. So practically, there's not really like a whole danger of like, you know, that being caught out. But my point is that my top speed is 20 miles an hour. and that I can use that from the pedals, or I can do a throttle. Like I can turn the throttle on the right handlebar, and that will speed me up to 20 miles an hour. And so yeah, I can use that practically to get to and from work, and save
pretty cool.
save a shit ton on gas.
Now, charging wise, how does that work? Where do you have to plug it in?
So you can plug it into any normal like outlet, and into, because it has like a you know, like how laptop batteries will have like the cord, and then there's like a battery unit or something, like a charging like unit.
You've got like a brick. You've got
Exactly.
a brick, yeah.
And then that plugs into the battery itself. So yeah, the battery itself is housed in the body of the frame, and the bike actually folds in half, and so you can like unlock it and fold it in half, and then the slot where the battery goes into is exposed when you fold it open, and then you can pull it out and charge it just by itself, or there's a hole on the side of the frame of the bike too that you can just plug the battery directly into the charger while it's still in the bike.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool. I honestly, if I lived closer to where I work, I'd consider getting one. But like as it stands now, I have to get on the highway and shoot 30-35 minutes to work most days. It really just depends on which location I'm working at.
Yeah.
So it's like, one of them's like 10 minutes from my house, and the other one's 35 minutes. And I mean, I could probably do the 10-minute pretty easy on a bike. But yeah, the other one would be a little hairy trying to get all the way to work. I mean, there'd be a lot of back roads and stuff. There's just no way.
Yeah, no, it's practical for some areas and not others. Because yeah, 30 mile, like I don't know how much that is in miles, but the range on this is basically, if you're using a lot of, it depends on the degree of pedal assist that you use, and like how much the elevation changes and stuff affect that as well, because if the motor's going up, it's got to work more. But on the lower end of the range, it's like 18 to 20 miles, and then on the higher end of the range, it's like 45. So, it's feasible for certain commutes. Mine's about 10 miles, so that's pretty doable using that, and even I can charge it once I get to work too, because I can just stash it in the corner of like our closet at work, and then pull out the battery and plug that into any outlet.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's a convenient little, like, it's basically, I was like, yo, I'm not paying those fucking tickets, at least not now. Like, you guys can hold on to that money for a bit, or you can hold on to that debt. You can take away my my license if you want, and I'll just ride a bike. Fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they've made it so expensive for you to actually fix the problem that you might as well at this point. It's like I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, and with gas prices, it just seemed way more practical to go that route.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially for like the for what I use it for, because I really don't have to go that far, and I don't really go like to like a lot of other places that are way far away. Like I generally drive like or go within like 10-15 miles of my house, and I can usually get everything that I need within that kind of range. And honestly, it's kind of fun, man. I haven't really had a bike since I was like in my early 20s, and so like just getting back on a bike and just like riding around town and stuff, it's just it's kind of nice. I definitely I'm thinking if I go back to a motor vehicle or go back to like a road vehicle, that I might consider getting a motorcycle instead of
I've wanted to get a motorcycle for a while.
It's just it's just cool kind of zooming around on two wheels like that, even if I'm going only 20 miles an hour, but it's still it's pretty awesome.
It's it's mildly goofy, but I really want to get one. My uncle is honestly, he's one of my favorite people. I'm probably closer with my aunt and uncle on my mom's side than I am with like most of my actual family. There's just a lot of drama and shit there that I don't like dealing with. But they're really cool, and he's always been very gifted when it comes to really anything. I mean, he's got his own, or had his own avionics business. He recently sold it to retire.
Nice.
But when he was like 12 or 13, he built a motorcycle out of a bike and like a lawnmower engine, and like he's been doing stuff with motorcycles ever since. And one of the things he was doing before, I'm not sure he does it as much now. Pretty sure he still has it. Um, he was like a big Ural enthusiast, which they're a brand of motorcycle that was very popular in Russia, especially during I think it was World War II, because you could mount guns and stuff. And then they have a sidecar. They're
Okay.
sidecar motorcycles. They're really cool, actually. When I was a kid, my uncle used to take me out on his lot and stuff, and I've always kind of wanted to buy one.
Yeah. No, they seem like a lot of fun. I think the only other time, well, I've ridden a motorcycle twice in my life, other than that, which was once in elementary school. Our principal had a motorcycle. He rode a motorcycle, and if you got student of the month, then he gave you a short ride around like the surrounding area of the school.
Nice.
On his motorcycle. And so I got that one time and was able to do that. And then the other time was just a buddy of mine who had a motorcycle and that we needed to go somewhere, and he's like, yeah, just hop on the back and ride, bitch, motherfucker. I'm like, sure, whatever. And yeah, it was cool. It was fun. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a different experience, right? Like, you're not really, like, you don't think of how strange it is to just like kind of like sit on a seat like outside while you're zooming along at fucking 40 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour, depending on if you're getting on a highway or some shit. So it's just like a super weird feeling to just like, I'm real out here, man. It's like when you're like getting a Jeep that doesn't have any doors and you're just like, okay, I mean, it's way windier than than a fucking car for sure.
Oh yeah, and you have to drive a lot more, especially around here. Like, you have to drive a lot more defensively because people just don't. They won't fucking look, and they will flatten your ass in a second.
Yeah, I got me a little fucking rear view mirror on the left side, since I'm, you ride on the right side constantly. So really, majority of the time you're looking over your left shoulder to see if anybody's getting too close and fucking with you and shit. So yeah, I got a mirror for that. But yeah, that's what we got this week. That's what's been going on. Gas prices have been kind of leveling out and lowering, but with nothing in like conditions wise improving, like this seems like it's gonna be short lived, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I think you're right.
All right, well,
we'll see though.
Yeah, that's what we got this week. That's what we got going on. Like I said, we still got the rest of the war, or was it the Enough Already videos? There's a lot of good ones there, like Syria, Libya, and Yemen. We still got to look at. And this interview as well is really interesting because it's very relevant to sort of illustrating the motivations. Like, why would the U.S. even do this, right? Why would the West even want to get into a proxy war using Ukraine to fight against Russia? Like, what's the whole deal with backing them up? What's to be accomplished by this? And so this guy really delves. He has an article that delved into it, but then this whole interview is basically just having him explain what he wrote in the article. So that's a good thing to in a way to watch another time, because I think it'll be good.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and end the stream. We'll be back next week doing the same old thing, gapping up a bunch of bullshit to talk about. So if anybody's watching, has anything that they want, you can send it to either me or Hominis on Tumblr, or message this YouTube channel, or send a pigeon. I don't give a fuck. I'll get it. Pigeons know me, man. They know who I am. And we'll see you next week. All right, later, everybody. Say bye, Hominis.